thing. So let me see if I can do that.
It says it's recording.
I jumped the gun.
Oh, thank you, bud.
Didn't want to miss anything.
I knew I made you a co-host for a reason. All right. Pull that agenda back up so you can see what's next.
Next, we we permanently moved public comments up front now. Is that
You know, I usually cut and paste from the last agenda, so if that's where it was last time, then that's where it is this time until
so maybe we revisit this at the end as well? I don't
we can do that, certainly.
Yeah.
But if you want to open them up now.
Anybody raise their hand if they have a public comment at this point?
I'm not seeing any right now.
I don't see any. Okay, so on to the next item, proposed zoning amendments to the Crossroads plan development, i.e. uses in the Innovation District. So you have an introduction, Dan or Karen?
Well, let's see. I'm going to invite Dan and Rocky in from the Downs. As you guys have seen, this is a property owner developer initiated zoning changes, and there's really two of them to talk about, and we separated them on the agenda just for sort of ease of discussion and to really sort of try to separate the issues. And so the first one, you know, I probably in hindsight, as I was looking through their agenda or through their memo today, I could have probably switched the agenda items to follow the memo in the same pathway. But the first one on the agenda is to talk about, let's see, to talk about uses in the Innovation District. So I think I will probably just turn it to the Downs team to introduce what their proposal is. Karen, I don't know if you had anything you want to mention.
Good morning. This is Dan. I was going to say I can see the committee members, but for some reason I can't turn my video on. So it says that the cannot start your video because the host has stopped it. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I'm going to make
You guys don't want to see me on a Friday morning, or I was going to say it's very nice to see everybody. It's been a while. So, and I know that it's a tricky technology thing on a Friday morning. So why don't I, there we go. Hey, thanks. Good morning, and thanks for having this on the agenda. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Good.
Great. So these two proposals that come to this committee are really kind of direct land use considerations in light of the pandemic and really the economic kind of shifts that are occurring in light of it. And they're intentionally two different proposals. And I can certainly take the Innovation District one first. That one's related to warehousing and distribution, an entirely separate amendment to the other one that we'll talk about next. But as I'm sure committee members are experiencing and seeing, kind of the pandemic has propelled e-commerce and kind of direct delivery to customers, and sort of the needs for a variety of industries to have warehousing and distribution. And we're seeing that kind of directly in terms of our marketing and conversations with end users, and think there's a significant need in Greater Portland for some amount of this space, in addition to what's already allowed in the Innovation District. And we also see that it can be kind of key to attracting other components to what is allowed in the Innovation District. So maybe I'll back up a little bit. On the Innovation District, probably as the Long Range Planning Committee remembers, that's the area of the Downs up by closer to Payne Road. It's the northern quarter, I'll say, of the Downs property, and it has direct access to Payne Road. So a couple of years ago, there was amendments made just when the Downs was kicking off to allow for a range of light industrial uses there. Manufacturing, light industrial, contractor space, and already we're seeing a lot of those end users come along and locate in the innovation district. So it's been super successful in that regard. And at the time, not all industrial uses were permitted in the innovation district. So warehousing and distribution was not one of those uses that was included. And so that's kind of looking back. And as I indicated, we're seeing a lot of demand for specific warehousing and distribution that we think could be a great fit for the innovation district. And many of those are related to kind of key end users and industries in Greater Portland that we think are, many of which are local and many of which are growing in a positive way. And so some examples would be kind of medical and high tech. And that's often related to, or right now related to, kind of the pandemic in medical industries that need space for storage and distribution of equipment and other things that are responding to the pandemic. That's one kind of sector, and there's a lot of growth and a lot of need. And we think if some of that's allowed in the innovation district can spur other lines of those businesses, such as the processing, such as the assembly, such as the manufacturing. Another, but totally unrelated, is around kind of the seafood industry and food processing. So food processing and seafood processing is permitted in the zone as a big need, as a growing industry in Greater Portland, and locating away from the docks and more near transportation corridors like the innovation district. With that, there comes demand for cold storage. And that's been much talked about in Greater Portland. There's been a lot of conversation in Portland around that. And that's a form of warehousing that's specialty, that's and directly related to kind of serving and attracting the seafood and the food processing. So that's something that we didn't know much about 2 years ago, that we know more about and think could be a good fit and companion with other activities in the innovation district. And then there's obviously the change in retail and a dramatic slowdown in kind of retail bricks and mortar and sort of direct delivery to consumers. I'm sure we're all experiencing the frequency of UPS and FedEx in our driveways. So, it went from a steady increase to a rapid increase, in the past 6 months, and will continue that way. So those are really kind of the three, and Rocky can jump in, three kind of drivers of why we wanted to talk about this and consider allowing what I would say sort of a moderate amount of this type of kind of warehousing and distribution to coexist in the innovation district, and really to kind of spur and also generate additional permitted uses already in the innovation district. And so in thinking about it, and in part of your package, we provided the actual zone changes that we wanted to talk with you about. And the two lines or permitted uses are pretty simple. You add warehousing, you add distribution, but in another section to kind of ensure that it fits from a percentage or compatibility standpoint, we also established essentially a cap so that the land area allowed for these more light industrial uses within the Downs, that area up close to Payne Road, that no more than 25% of it be kind of these warehousing and distribution uses, because there are a lot of exciting things already happening in the Innovation District that are light industrial, manufacturing, some office. And, you know, we're not looking for this part of the project to all of a sudden just be, you know, kind of warehousing distribution. We're looking for it to be mixed use, to continue to be innovative, and a range of light industrial activities, and but supplement with these warehousing distribution uses that we think can fit and can spur the other things that are permitted in the zone. So with that kind of long-winded introduction, I'll stop there. Rock, you've certainly add anything I'm missing, and entertain kind of conversation on it.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Dave, before we get into committee discussion?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I just want to, and maybe this can be part of the discussion, but I think it'd be helpful to clarify what is meant by land area. Just, you know, is it land area of the buildings? Is it the lot that the building is on? I think we just want to sort of clarify that piece. I think, you know, I understand the directive, you know, or the direction you're headed, but I think we just want to be sure we're sort of, yeah, have that piece understood, because I think lot area, building area are two different things, and how, so that'd be all I might say on that. And I just wonder if you've sort of thought it through in that way yet, Dan, or if you really just sort of are laying out some basics, and these are things you want to think through more as well. So.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. We've thought it through to a degree, and we want to have a conversation on it. We've talked about land area, not building square footage. And as the committee may remember, there's an area where it's called basically the light industrial inclusionary zone of the CPD district. And that's where the other light industrial uses are allowed. And that's in the zoning ordinance today under the Crossroads district. So at a starting point, not to get super nuanced, we've said it's 25% of where these light industrial uses are allowed per the map that's in the zone. Thinking that, you know, we didn't want to get too fine-grained on, is it X square footage of building or Y of parking? It's kind of a broad metric that I think could be easily tracked.
So, and again, I think I heard it, but I just want to echo it to see if I heard it. You're really thinking it's the parcel area that the use is placed on. So if it's on if it's on a 1 acre lot, that we're counting that whole acre, or are you just counting? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, sorry, maybe I misexplained it. So there's if you did maybe screen share, Jay, I could just plop up.
Should be able to, I think.
Oh, that's probably on me. Just 1 sec.
Yep. And I'm sorry if I'm diving into the weeds. We can certainly.
Yep. Let's see. I'll share my screen and. So this is the CPD district. And can everybody see that graphic?
Yes.
So that graphic outlines the overall area of the project, where it's called the industrial related uses area of the CPD. So within that area, currently light industrial uses are allowed, with the list that's currently allowed. So we're proposing as a starting point that no more than 25% of this land area can be dedicated to warehousing and distribution uses.
Yeah,
So it's not parcel, but it's this area of the project.
Yep, I understood that. I guess what
Okay.
yeah, I'll hold off for now. We can circle back to it as we see where the general direction of the committee is, I guess.
And do you have a sense of how many acres the innovation district is? Do you know?
It's around 160 in that range.
So ballpark, you'd be talking a quarter of that. 40 acres could up to somewhere in that range could be warehouse and distribution.
As a ceiling.
Yeah.
Right.
Committee members, any comments off the bat?
Dan, it's Rick. Would these type of uses change the nature of the type of traffic that would be coming in and out of the Downs, particularly from Payne Road? I mean, warehousing and distribution to me sounds like something where big trucks come in, get stuff and leave. And I don't know whether that is currently the nature of the traffic that the Downs envision to be generated by the uses in that area. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So it's a good question, Rick. Around the current design of the road system and the connection to Payne Road and also down to exit 42 is designed for a percentage of truck traffic. This is, if you think of the project, this is really that end of the project, the truck end of the project,
Right.
From a design standpoint. In so far with the Innovation District lots, it's a pretty interesting mix. There's some uses that have kind of box trucks, shorter trucks. And
Right.
then we're starting to see some end users that have larger trailer trucks that, have a component of warehouse distribution as part of their assembly or part of their operations. So we have been designing for kind of larger vehicles. And, the research we've been doing around kind of warehouse and distribution that might be interested in this project aren't necessarily high volume. Like for example, cold storage. That's sort of for me an easier example. That isn't, night and day heavy truck traffic in and out.
Right.
It's more moderate. Small, it's kind of low or moderate truck traffic because there's storage is a big component. It's there's not frequent in and outs. Same would be true with some of these medical high tech kind of end users where they're doing less frequent but larger deliveries. So they're delivering to other parts of the region or New England, but it's not, in and out busy truck traffic. So kind of long story short, it's really kind of use specific, and the things that we've been thinking about have truck traffic. They are loading docks and that type of design, but it isn't the frequent distribution and where distribution that sometimes you might think with a truck terminal. A truck terminal is not one of the. That's another definition, I think, and Jay and Karen need to kind of weigh in on that. That's something that's allowed in the industrial zones that we're not proposing to add here, where it's just a sea of loading docks and it's just all kind of truck storage and activity. I don't know if that helped, Rick.
Well, would it be fair to say that even if that the type of traffic for this part of the project that I'm talking about, I guess, is already the kind of traffic that even if you didn't make this change is anticipated or planned for, or in other words,
Yeah.
You're not talking about all residential, passenger cars, and now all of a sudden you got a whole bunch of trucks. This is sort of traffic that may occur in any event. I mean,
Yes.
I recognize it's ultimately a planning board issue, but I'm just trying to get a sense of.
Yeah, and the road design is as such. I mean, the subdivision layout, the road geometry, the intersections are designed for those types of vehicles.
I see. Are there, I know you probably can't name names, but are there specific tenants or builders or owners, whatever, that you're talking to that need this zone change in order to come to the project? Or put another way, I'm just trying to get a sense of the types, a little bit more specificity on an example of a use that might occur.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so medical, high tech, warehousing and distribution is a specific use that is interested in the innovation district. Companies that have a presence in Scarborough and in surrounding communities that have expansion needs based on the growth of their industry and would like to have some warehousing and distribution for those growing industries. And also are interested in, that being a step one. A step two would be to grow the manufacturing, the high tech, the assembly component of what they do also in innovation districts. So those are pretty compelling for Scarborough and for the project to say, hey, we want to get you in the project and satisfy your immediate need, and then grow what you can do in the innovation district under other permitted uses that are as important or maybe more important to the innovation district and to the town.
Would this require more or different layout of parking? I mean, would there be a bunch of panel trucks that would be parked near these facilities at night and then off they go during the daytime and that sort of thing? Or,
I mean, it does have an effect on overall kind of site layout, as you know. Kind of larger trucks need more turning radius, just need a little more driveway area to make their movements. So it does have a land use, implication for sure. But we're seeing some of that with some of our other smaller end users that have loading docks. AV Technic is one of the new end users that's in there. And we figured out a pretty creative design to kind of work with them on a loading dock and still have a nice setting. So the innovation district's intended to kind of accommodate some of that already.
good. Well, that's helpful.
I don't know what the protocol is. If I can jump in.
Go right ahead.
Is that all right, Dave? So I just want to address some of Rick's questions and comments. The Innovation District is currently planned and built to handle truck traffic.
That's what I was getting at.
All of these lots had been anticipated that there would be some truck traffic involved. In fact, we probably have some end users that really won't have much truck traffic. And I think overall, if we're allowed to move forward with this proposal, in the end, we probably aren't going to have really any more truck traffic than what we had anticipated. And certainly the systems are built to accommodate that. But one of the things I have to kind of dumb it down for me, and I don't know, maybe it's helpful for other people too. But right now, if we have a company that wants to say build a building and they produce something, they have raw materials shipped in and they produce it within their building and then they ship it out, that's perfectly within the zone. If we have a company that simply wants to bring raw material in, store it for a little while, and then it moves over to their offsite location and gets assembled, and then maybe comes back and gets stored for a little while longer, and then gets shipped out to the end user, we can't do that. So there's the nuance. Right now, you have to, this has to be some value added. There has to be something done with those products within the building to be an allowed use. And this will allow us to simply store for a while. It will be a way that we can get a known end user, we believe, in the door. And then, we're pretty confident that there'll be more that will come later. But we're just seeing that this is a need. We don't anticipate, we're not looking for an Amazon to come in and, have a distribution center here that doesn't fit with what we want to do. And it just wouldn't be the right fit. But having some ability to simply store, I think is pretty important for the Innovation District to be successful.
That's helpful, Rocky. Again, I was getting at sort of will traffic change, anticipated type of traffic change, and it's helpful to know that sounds like you already anticipated with respect to what you can do there now. So that's good. Thanks.
I'll chime in a couple, okay, go ahead, Karen.
No, Dave, you go ahead and I'll wrap up.
I guess collectively, an open question. I'm curious if anybody recalls why we didn't put these in the beginning, back when the Downs was running through approval early on. Were there specific reasons why we did not include these? And I think it was probably obviously around traffic and building size and volume and all that sort of thing. But I'm just curious for others' input why we didn't include these earlier. And to my other comment is, yes, just to control the size. You know, obviously the postal facility at the other end of the road is the opposite end of the scale here. But perception wise, we'd have to make sure that people aren't thinking that that's the kind of thing that's coming here. So if anybody has any memory about the initiation of this, I'd be like to hear it.
I mean, one thing I can offer is that this use is contemplated in the comprehensive plan from '06. It talks about warehousing, distribution, manufacturing, assembly. So I guess I might look to Dan and Rocky as to, yeah, I don't recall with the original proposal for innovation including these uses. And so I don't know that they were really discussed all that much by the town, since we were really responding more than, so.
Yeah, I don't recall, we didn't spend a lot of time on that. I don't think early on when we made this request. I think that, at the time we weren't looking for an Amazon type user and just that wasn't something we were thinking about. And we didn't really realize, until COVID hit, what might be needed, and it's made us rethink it. But I don't, Dan, do you remember how that all went down and why we did what we did or asked for what we asked for?
No, I think that's right, Rocky and Jay. I think we weren't, we weren't looking to locate, kind of truck terminals and just what sort of,
Right.
I would say, conventional warehouse and distribution you think of maybe 10 or 15 years ago. And the industry has been changing over the past 5 years, and it's changed a lot in the last 6 months. So I think it wasn't a focus because of what sort of convention thought of as in terms of that use. And, RC Moore, for example, which is up the street, is a good example of kind of old, conventional distribution where it's, a trucking company. That wasn't what we envisioned for Innovation District, and it kind of still isn't. But we're learning a lot about these other end users that need this right now and think that in a selective way, they could fit really well and be assets.
If I could interject, I remember, because I was on long range planning and whatever, the concerns at the time was exactly that. We didn't want trucking terminals in there. We wanted a different feel. There was some concern that, if you had a true so-called, I'll call it a true industrial district up there, would it not be a good mix with the residential components that we were looking to do in a true mixed use development? So I do think it was more the, concept of large trucking or large ugly, to use a pejorative term, warehouses there. And I can tell you that looking at this, I like the fact that there's a limit on, what they can do as far as the use of that space, 25%. I guess a question, and I could probably answer it, but I just wanted to throw it out there because I just know this would come up from the council, for example, is, so you've got this 25% of that land space. I'm assuming someone's going to be keeping track because you're going to have some users coming in and say the front part is going to be something, and then the back part will be this warehousing. And I assume that counts towards the total. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I know that's probably a planning board thing, but that was just a question I had.
Yeah, and I think, from a zoning perspective, the warehousing, distribution, sort of storage piece has always been, it gets a little fuzzy at times where you have a user who, their widget may be a large item. And, so while they may do in the front end of the house some minor work with it, or even sales of the item, that the thing they need that they're selling or doing a little bit of assembly on takes a lot of space to store. And however, you could have another business whose widget has the same hands-on approach to whatever that thing is, whether it's, some minor touch to it, some minor assembly and sale of the item, but it doesn't take a whole lot of space to keep. And so, it's really always, I think that's one of the things that the planning board does work through sometimes to say, okay, what is this use? Is this use truly a retail use that happens to store large items that, hot tubs, a good example. If you're going to sell hot tubs, those are a big thing you need to keep somewhere, but you only need a few. Your showroom doesn't need to be that big, right? So I do think in some ways the use does get defined through that planning board process. I think AV Tech is another really good example, actually, Dan. I think you mentioned it, or Rocky, someone mentioned it earlier. They help put on, my understanding anyway, is they help put on, I want to say concerts, but that's not right.
Shows, trade shows.
Yeah,
Thank you.
audio visual.
Audio visual.
events. Yep.
Thank you. And really what they do is they store the materials there, but that's not, their business isn't the storage of the goods. Their business is the utilization of those goods elsewhere. And so I think that's really, sort of the difference, or the way we sort of think through it is, warehousing really is, the business is the storing of the goods,
Right.
where other activities.
Yeah,
Yeah,
did you
so,
do some clarification of the definitions a little while ago? In the zoning ordinance, didn't we do some clarifications? Because we really did talk in some depth about storage versus warehousing, and it really gets to the general purpose. Just like you said, some businesses have product that they need to store on site, either while they're working on it, or storage for till it's purchased. But that's different from 100% of the structure being used to store or to distribute. So it's really the distribution piece of it and the amount of the space that's being used. And I can't remember whether we put a percentage.
So that was in the Higas Parkway. We did some work within the last year to two. I can't quite recall what it was. We have had definitions of warehousing and of distribution in our ordinance, so they're defined uses. Yeah.
And I think the other thing I wanted to say is, in some respects, the warehousing, as Dan has said, it's really been changing, and it's not just the amount of warehousing space that's needed in the market. It is what that warehousing looks like. And there tends to be now, or the trend is that there's going to be more equipment, more automation in the warehouses, which again, typically we think of a warehouse as not being very high taxables, but because of the machinery that's being used in some of the warehousing, that is changing in terms of the taxable items within that that structure within that purpose. So it is evolving. There's no question. We're working with 2 warehousing facilities right now, trying to help them locate and help sort out some of the definitions of where they belong. So there's definitely a high demand. That doesn't mean we have to automatically accept it, but the demand is there and they need to go someplace, and these uses can be very beneficial and are rising in their taxable values.
And actually, I might ask just as part of the sausage making process, things that come to my mind always. But I think, part of the conversations I've heard have really been sort of this, when we talk about warehousing and distribution, as Karen mentioned, there's this demand for it, is really associated with sort of a principal identified company, right? That X company needs to store stuff in a space, and so they're really going to be the owner of that warehouse. I think, and to me, I start to wonder, is if, and that's still an if question, if the amount of truck sort of movement, recognizing that this area is designed for truck movement, but really is it, do we have trucks coming and going all day, or are they coming, where am I headed with this? Where I'm headed is the difference sort of between a warehousing storage that's sort of accompanying with or associated with a principal or maybe 2 principal users, or are there users out there, and this is sort of an open question maybe to Karen or Dan and Rocky, who are more in the marketplace, are there business models where I might just be a warehousing company and I store from Karen's widgets and Bacon widgets and Risbera widgets and Fellow widgets, and maybe that's sort of a different item, but that may also be what is sought here. But I just want to, I don't know if that helped sort of further this conversation or muddy it, but it came to my mind, so I threw it out there.
I'll just say most of the people that I've been working with over the last few years have been the company model. It's the company, it's their product. I'm not saying that they might not be selling product from other people, but they are the controlling agent, and they're not leasing out subsections of their product. And I won't speak for Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's generally true as we think of it, maybe except for cold storage. Cold storage, you may be storing
freezer type building.
Food companies, and it's a highly specialized building, so not every company can put up a cold storage facility. But other than that, in the marketplace, it has been specific companies who have increasing warehouse and or kind of distribution needs, not like this big warehouse where everybody or many different entities have storage. But again, I think we're not also trying to catch every kind of warehouse and distribution facility out there. We see this as a complement to the innovation district already, and something that can spur additional innovation district development that's allowed to a degree and be compatible and complementary.
And Jay, I guess the one question, I think you were alluding to it maybe earlier, is, if you do have sort of a mixed use version, with a section of warehousing, and I'm not sure that we'll run into that, but how do you count the land? You just say if it's a 20,000 square foot building and 10,000 is a warehousing company, then half of the lot is counted toward the 25%.
What we try to do here, and maybe it's not written well, I put it up on the screen, is under number 6. Warehouse and distribution facilities, when principal uses shall not exceed 25%. So our intent, and we can work with UJ and Phil and others on how it should read, if it doesn't read well, is when that's the principal use, that's when it's counted. There's a variety, I mean, most of our innovation district allowed uses have a warehouse component, like,
Right. That's, so I would call that storage as opposed to.
yeah, and I mean,
Yeah.
it's also the use, not sort of the building construction. Like Jay brought up AV Technic. AV Technic is a big box. From the outside, you might call it a warehouse. In it is all of his supplies and equipment that they use daily, hourly for events. And so they require a big space to kind of store and work on and prepare for audio events. So, but it requires an open floor area to do that.
Dan, I wasn't thinking so much of those uses. I think those are clearly not warehousing.
Okay.
I was thinking, and I think it would be rare because I don't know that I see this anywhere, but let's say you do have, a mixed use project and there are two companies in it and one company actually is separate and truly a warehousing project.
Yep.
That's
definitely.
Yeah.
So we'd have to figure out how to allocate that. Yeah, that half of the building is a warehouse use, and that half of the parking area is parking for warehouse. That counts towards this percentage. That makes total sense. Is that where you're driving at?
Yes. But just to make it clear on that land area, we're really talking about if the entire lot of any warehouse is counted in that 25%.
Yeah. So if it's a warehouse building, that's all that's happening is a warehouse use on a site, then that site area would count towards the 25%. So whatever is needed for that warehouse to operate, parking lot, driveways, landscaping, buildings.
So again, I just, for clarity, if we have a 10,000 square foot building on a 1 acre lot, are you saying we count, in your sort of vision, is it the 10,000 square foot building? Is it the 30,000 square feet that includes building and parking lot? Or is it the 40,000 square foot lot area? And I
It would
think
be the lot.
administratively,
I would call it the lot. I mean, I think.
Okay, I just wanted, administratively, I just don't see how we could get any cuter than that and try to keep track of this. Because what will become difficult down the road is obviously, eventually these 54 lots are going to be sold off. We're going to have 54 different owners that the town's now going to have to try to track across time eternity here to until we change this percentage. So, it can be done, but I just wanted, the cleaner, the easier, so I think that, thank you. I think that's good clarity for me anyway.
Okay, I think we should keep moving here. I think conceptually and from a high altitude, I'm comfortable here so long as the facts meet the perception that this is a smaller facility, moderately sized, not a lot of truck loading bays, but and as you put it, complementary to the uses that are there. So I think that's my perspective here. Does anybody else want to weigh in so we can move, Corey?
Yeah, I agree with you, Dave. That's exactly where I am. And it certainly feels like the path of least resistance here would be, for the developer would be to want to just open this up and turn it into a truck terminal, given the proximity to exit 42 and everything else. But obviously that's not the direction that the town would want to go. And I appreciate that the owner doesn't have that vision either. So I think it's a good approach to put this cap on it and can sort of work through the exact mechanisms for administering it.
I'm there. Agree with all those comments.
I agree with everything.
It's Judy, I agree.
Get into the next half of this?
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so the next one is, and I'll just do it again, another real quick intro on this and then turn it to the Downs team here. But the other proposal is to amend the Crossroads district more broadly. Now we're really looking at the entire area, I believe anyway, and Dan will correct me where I go astray on that, to enable drive-through restaurants in the Crossroads district. As again, you'll remember, the Crossroads district allows really, it's our most flexible and permissive zone. It does allow for restaurants currently, but not for drive-through restaurants. This is actually an item that I think or I know was before you all back in early 2018. There was some discussion around this issue, and I was sort of going back in the notes on that. And I know the committee had, I think there was some general interest in the concept, but I think there was also really interest around seeing some performance standards in place around what is it we mean here for drive-through as we seek to sort of create a downtown center. Is, what's the I think traffic impacts, as I read through the notes, were really sort of the main element. So just sort of, if it's gnawing in the back of your mind that you feel like we've talked about this before, it's because you have. With
Thanks,
that,
Jay.
yep.
Yeah, I mean, as Jay introduced, this has been on the radar for a while. Similar to kind of warehouse and distribution, crazy world we're living in right now, and the pandemic has really brought it to the forefront from a need standpoint. And I think as everybody is experiencing, like drive-throughs, pickup windows, that type of operation is critical for restaurants to succeed right now. And we feel kind of fortunate enough that the success of the Downs project, we're starting to have interest by restaurants. There's becoming, with the residential phases, with the town center starting review by the planning board. There's high interest in the Payne Road area with the Innovation District and other uses up there. We want to be accommodating restaurants, and those are key land uses for a community. Hopefully they'll not just be drive-throughs in the next few years. There'll be also sit-down restaurants, but or pickups. So in order to attract and have restaurants be able to have those conversations, we need to kind of have some flexibility around how they kind of operate. So that's kind of one piece of this. And we think with the Crossroads zone and the master planning and all the review that the planning board does, obviously the Crossroads zone is the most rigorous zone in town in terms of upfront review. We think there's a kind of great process in place to make sure drive-through restaurants fit the context within the project. And those mechanisms are in place. So we think it can fit. We think it can fit successfully. And I guess the other final piece around traffic is there's only 2 or 3 connections from the project to the road system, and they're all kind of heavily regulated. So typically with like a drive-through restaurant, the concern is ins and outs and queuing and what is the traffic congestion that might be created by certain drive-through restaurants, most notably coffee shops. And the Downs, out of probably any of the areas around it, on Higas Parkway, there's only one access point. It's only one access point allowed by Maine DOT. And there's a traffic movement permitting process. So that's sort of heavily regulated in terms of where you can come in and out there. And it's not like a variety of other curb cuts can be added along Haggis Parkway to plop down different drive-through restaurants in a row along that corridor. Payne Road is similar, where there's already a signalized intersection. We have plans to continue to make improvements to that signalized intersection and have a fairly controlled access corridor on Payne Road. And Route 1, we don't currently have land area to be adding any type of restaurant, just given the current connection to that intersection and the nature of that into the project anyway. That's really our residential end. So we think that with the traffic controls and regulations in place, coupled with the plan development standards, it'd be fitting to have some drive-through restaurants that fit the project and mitigate impacts on the road system. And, in large part, we're thinking of a project like Bessie Square, like Scarborough Grounds has a drive-through. I wouldn't think of it or consider it as sort of your classic restaurant drive-through. It's in a mixed-use building. So something like that in the center of the project, we think would be an asset, not a liability. Maybe on Haggis Parkway or Payne Road, there might be a restaurant drive-through that's not quite as mixed use as that, but that we think would be fitting, and the traffic impacts would be mitigated. So that's kind of where we're at right now with this proposal. Rocky, certainly fill in anything I've missed.
No, I think you've covered it. We're looking to be able to give end users options, and obviously how a restaurant is laid out and how they run their business today is different than it was when the Crossroads zone was first conceived. So we're just looking to try to get some options and to be able to make something happen. And we know that, some of these restaurants are going to need drive-through. It won't be appropriate in all areas, but the planning board, I think, can vet through that as we go. We're not going to bring a proposal to the planning board that we don't think will physically work. So, but just having the option and the ability to do it, I think, is important.
If I could weigh in here, I know I approached Jay at town hall the other day. I've talked to a few people, a couple on the council, and just some people in the general population. And I don't know, I would prefer to see pickup as opposed to drive-through. I think, to me, pickup connotates that you've called in for an order, you've made your payment, and then you're just picking it up. So then you wouldn't get the queuing and whatever behavior. And usually there's a time frame where people pick up, and that way it would give restaurants, coffee shops, whomever, the ability to serve without having people come into the business itself. But again, that's just my feeling, and part of it is just to eliminate the drive-through, because drive-through is so broad, and that's where you get the queuing and the this and the that. And I mean, do we really want to see that in this district or not? But I'm just throwing that out there, that delineating the difference between pickup versus drive-through.
So if I could, I agree with you, Jean Marie, but I do think there would be some areas within the Downs that it could be appropriate to actually have what we call today a drive-through. Other areas, you're right, maybe it's more of a pickup type window where someone has called ahead and already paid. Now they're just picking up. We're just looking for some flexibility. So maybe we could work through some language that would address that.
I think this also ties in. I mean, our last meeting, we had a lengthy discussion about this on Haggis. So I think a lot of the comments are probably similar, and they revolve around the traffic, as we all know. So ways to mitigate traffic through curbside pickup, I think, is one. To give them the options is a good thing. And also make it contextual, like you're saying, Dan. I agree that Bessie Square is a good example of it right now, as opposed to a Dunkin' Donuts, which is the opposite end of the spectrum. So whatever controls we can do to keep it contextual and with your downtown vision, I think are positive.
Yeah, I
This
mean,
is something that I guess I'd want to give more thought to before taking a position today. I mean, I've thought of my overall view of the Downs project is it's sort of a destination community in the sense of there are residences there. There will be this center area with businesses. People will drive there, park there, shop. Something about a drive-through type facility within the project that, I mean, what am I going to do? Jump in my car in one of the residential buildings and drive 500 yards to get a cup of coffee? That doesn't strike me as quite what we envisioned. And certainly I wouldn't want to see something that people drive to the Downs just to get a cup of coffee and then drive out again. So I guess I'd want to give this one a little more thought before. I mean, I'm not saying no, I'm not saying yes. I'm just saying we have about 20 minutes to finish a few other things today. And I'm not prepared to take a position on this type of a change right now. Too many things to talk about.
So if I could jump in, think about this, Rick, and I understand we'll kick down the road a little bit here and talk about it later, but just as you're thinking about this, what if you were working out of one of those buildings in the Innovation District and you had time enough to go, get a breakfast sandwich and a coffee, but you didn't really have time enough to walk all the way down there? You might jump in your car and run down. It's a mile and 3/4 from Route 1 to Payne Road. So it's a pretty good little distance. I do think people will live within and work within the Downs. And yeah, a lot will walk when they can, but if you're far enough away, you might jump in your car and drive down there. So,
Well, that's a legitimate point for sure.
thank you.
yeah, I mean, if I could jump in real quick, I really think it's to your point, Dave, potentially kind of contextual or should depend on where in the project that we're talking about.
It's another good point.
Along Payne Road and Haggis Parkway, all the zones around the Crossroads either already allow drive-throughs or are likely to. Haggis Parkway and Payne Road, B3 is on Payne Road. And those are more of kind of travel corridors right on the perimeter. They're not going to be sort of that center of the project walkable component. They're on the edge. If designed well and traffic's managed, I think a drive-through is likely fitting there. I don't see a big drive-through component that's plopped in the middle of the project. I think where you're thinking, Rick, where you expect mixed-use buildings and a really walkable environment.
Right.
That could be more of a Bessie Square or Scarborough Grounds kind of design, where we want to have a coffee shop for them to be viable and to locate there. The drive-through is almost accessory, but it's something that they're going to expect in order to locate there. I mean, Starbucks is another example where we'd love to have them in the center of the project. 80% of the people post-pandemic are going to walk in the front door, but having that drive-through will get them to locate there, and we can design it in a way that's compatible. So those are just some ideas on how it's not intended to be a broad brush. Maybe we need to come back with more fine-grained how this can fit, so we can work together on an approach.
Certainly where a project would be important to get a sense.
Mhm. And that's why I wanted the delineation between pickup and drive-through and some more thought given to that. Because to me,
Okay.
there is a difference.
I think a point too is to remember that we have businesses that are already established further down the road on Route 1 or whatever. And so hopefully we're not selling them short to, capture it just for the Higas Parkway.
Yeah, I do think one thing, the point I was going to make, which I think relates to what Judy just said, actually, is that at least the way I'm hearing the team describe this, it wouldn't be sort of a high visibility commuter impulse type use where you'd have people swinging through there on their way to work or just deciding at the last second to slam on their brakes like they do to pull into Dunkies or Holy Donut or wherever. Again, as I was hearing Dan and Rocky describe it, and I think obviously the devil's in the details in terms of how this gets articulated.
Yep.
It sounds like it would be ideally something that would be more kind of complementary and would be more of a supplemental feature of a use. And again, also, I feel like I'm legally obligated to mention that the planning board would obviously be able to review any particular site plans. And, the one example I always trot out whenever we have conversations along these lines is that in my 12 or so years on the planning board, the only project that we ever voted down would have been a Dunkies at Route 1 at the top of the hill coming out of Dunstan. And that was based on traffic and safety concerns. That's kind of an extreme example, and it's not exactly what we're talking about here, but that's just to illustrate that, there are multiple layers here to kind of review and protect against unsafe situations. But I think obviously beyond that, just the whole kind of intended character of this community is critical. So I'm glad to hear that people seem to be thinking along those lines.
So I'm hearing sort of the general sense is, let's keep a conversation going. Let's think about some further refinements of proposed language and maybe even further refinements of what we mean by drive-through in different areas of the Downs property proper, the 500 acres. I mean, we are talking about a fairly significant area here. So, and I think, if that's
300.
If that's sort of the general flavor, I think, staff can work with the Downs team to continue to refine that in the coming months and get that recirculated. If that makes sense for everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate to what we're starting with and where we're headed.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Okay,
We'll work with staff, and thanks for the conversation.
okay. Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Rock,
Good to see you
Dan.
guys.
Yep.
See you.
I'll move you guys back to attendees.
So
Okay.
moving on to the next item.
Sure. Actually, Camille, can I ask you to do the attendees thing while Karen and I try to?
Comprehensive plan, work plan.
Karen, you want to kick off? I'm got myself all discombobulated trying to move people around as well as think. Sorry.
Sure. Am I good? I'm not muted. So as you know, October 7th, next Wednesday is when we're doing our joint workshop. And Jay and I have been doing work on what that presentation is going to look like. And we're trying to keep it really high level and give people a sense of what is really in the plan. It's the visions and the next steps that go with those visions. And this is where we're going to ask some help from some of the long-range planning folks to do some audio work with that. But let's come back to that and we'll tell you more about it. Our concept is we are doing it, the presentation really as a video so that everything can be shown and people can see the whole piece all the way through to get really the full impact of what the comprehensive plan is, rather than stopping and answering questions and all of that. So we'll have about a 10 to 15 minute video, and then we'll go to really opening it up the whole way for everybody to chat. And Jay, I don't know if we want to talk about the meetings or the follow-up from the October 7th meeting.
Sure. I guess I'll look to the board. Do you guys want us to jump into sort of what to do as a follow-up, or do you want to really start the conversation around next Wednesday and then talk about that? Either way is fine by me.
Well, let's talk about the format for next. Yeah, the format. Will there be anybody in person, or is it all Zoom? It's all virtual.
It's all
It's all virtual.
The problem, I guess, since the voting will have started, the entire room is taken up with voting, I believe, is what's going on.
That's correct. So we don't have a space. So.
Right.
And as I think, and I'm sorry, I've been, so I think as Karen suggested, we're really thinking of, this being a kickoff, a reintroduction really to the community. And we have about an hour and a half, as I understand it, the meeting starting at 5:30. Council has a meeting at 7 afterwards. So this is really intended to, as I just said, kick the comp plan back off, get it back in the public eye, if you will, by having council and planning board start to engage the process. Where there's going to be, we have 7 members of council. What do we have? 7 members of the long range planning committee, 7 members of planning board, probably 3 to 5 staff members. In an hour and a half can go very, very quickly. So our intention is to try, again, as this is just the kickoff, to stay at the very high level, really focus on those 5 visions. Obviously bring people up to speed as to a little bit of the process that's gone into it so far. Some of the visions, what's the overarching goals or vision for the comp plan, and then really talk about next steps. 10 to 15 minutes is where we think the presentation is going to be. And then with 20 odd people who all have their own thoughts, I think, and the next hour is going to disappear before we know it. And so, if staff were to try to dive into the details of the plan, we wouldn't get to the conversation. So the thought is, again, this being the kickoff, reintroduction, I always seem to find, and I'm sure others feel it too, is, as a committee, we can talk about things forever, but until it gets to council, people don't engage it and don't know that it's real. So I think that's, to me, getting it before council is what's going to shake people a little bit to say, okay, and oh, by the way, we have this series of meetings coming up in the next month. Please join us there where we'll talk about more of the details and we can really get, dive in a little deeper. So that's really where we're hoping for it to go. And, as the email I sent out last night sort of suggests, and we've talked about really hoping to get committee voice into the presentation. We sort of see this as a video slideshow, if you will, that has, staff will be doing a lot of the narration, but if we can just have, lend your voices for a minute or two to talk about, one of the visions that you've sort of assigned to, we really think that'll be good.
And one of the reasons we've decided to do the slideshow with a voiceover for a couple of reasons. One, because an hour and a half really isn't that long considering the comp plan. And, we wanted to do the presentation in a very efficient way so that we didn't sort of ramble on in certain areas. So it's being very scripted in terms of making sure we're getting all the points in. And then the quality of the video becomes better in terms of how we're doing it. The other thing that happens is when it gets viewed again, they're not just looking at slides that don't have the voiceover. So when it gets viewed offline for people who didn't see it, they get the full context of the presentation. Without having to watch a meeting, they can quickly watch the video and really see what's going on.
And we are still working on that presentation. So don't ask us to see it yet.
Right, right.
We
So
love the
for those,
intent.
yeah, for those of you who were at SEDCO's annual meeting last year, we did this type of production for the award winners. And it's just, it winds up being very, very smooth and efficient in terms of getting a lot of information out quickly. Yeah, and where we wanted to use the voices of the committee members is we do have those 5 goals, and what we want to do is start out with a little bit of background introduction, and then we want to really step right into the vision statements. And if you'll remember, the vision statements are new. You know, they weren't in the previous drafts of the comprehensive plan, so that's why we wanted to focus on those as well. And it's really the link between those vision statements and the community processes that we want to make sure we establish that great link, because those vision statements really did come out of what we heard at the public process. So in this presentation, we're not just saying, yeah, we had this many meetings and this many people participated. We're saying, here's what we heard. And they're embodied in these 5 vision statements. And so there are 5 of you, I think, who volunteered a while back to introduce those vision statements. And we're just going to have you do an audio recording. If you've got an iPhone, we'll walk you through that. And then we're going to lay in that audio on top of the slides. And so what we envision is, for example, I think Robin was going to do vision 1. And so we produced the little script that basically says, hi, Robin Saunders. I'm a member of the Long Range Planning Committee. I'm also involved in these types of things. And now I want to introduce you to vision 1 of the comprehensive plan. And she's going to read the vision and then talk about what types of things are covered in that vision. And I think we laid that out in the email that Jay sent out. So we're going to have 5 of those, all from the Long Range Planning Committee introducing them. And then we move into, here are the tools by which we will move us toward these visions. And, you know, the first one is the future land use map. And so we're introducing the map and the context, and then really talking about what's the percentage of acres in each of these different areas. You'll see that, what did we come up with? I think it's
72% is in, was it 72? Yeah, is in no growth or rural residential. And about, what was it, 9% is in sort of our, the mixed use regional centers, Oak Hill, Dunstan, the Crossroads area.
Right.
So,
and we think there's power in looking at the future land use map. It becomes less scary when you see it, because so much of it is designated as no growth in rural areas. And us walking through what the map represents, I think will give people a real flavor for what's in the comp plan. And then we'll talk about the strategy pieces. And I think that's, if we get through that in the 15 minutes and then talk about the next steps, we're going to be pretty excited to have that in a nice video.
So you're going to draft the scripts?
Yes.
so you
Okay.
have, I don't know if you saw my email from yesterday.
I do.
So we have some very basic stuff in there for you.
Yeah.
And we can certainly, as we can work with you further, but we also want to give a little bit of freedom to committee members to think about what else you want to add. Again, keeping in mind, these are intended to be a minute to 2 minutes, somewhere in that range. So, by the time you do your introduction of yourself, you probably got 10 to 15 seconds run off the clock already. So, there's not a whole lot of depth you can get into, but so certainly, if you take a look at what we provided you and you want a little more help, Karen and I are here to do that. We are very hopeful to try to get the recordings by the end of the weekend, that for those that are comfortable sort of running on your own. For those that feel you might need help if you work through it over the weekend, then we'll want to engage right away on Monday to try to get that so we can do the layover. But we did give you at least a little bit to start working on. And again, we can try to refine that further for you if needed.
And toward the end, if we'll show you how to do this on the iPhone and email it. It's very easy to do.
That's you. That is you.
That's also another thing that if you just can't sort of figure it out, we can get together and push the buttons for you.
I'm not going to try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We really did. We wanted to give you at least a basic, everybody is saying the same thing. And if you don't want to say more, I think that's fine. Mm-hmm. But we also didn't want to stifle you if there are things you wanted to add. Right. And we do think there's power in, or it's not power, it is powerful to have you as committee members talk about, who you are. And, I think you all picked vision statements that were meaningful to you. So we think there's it's a powerful statement to have you guys really outline the visions for the community.
Yeah, Karen, the thing you just said, particularly Rick, I know you've emailed and said, "Oh man, I'm super busy. Help." I think you're right on, Karen. If it, short's fine. Doesn't have to be, whatever. Again, it's just really personal. Just being sure that folks understand that, the comp plan, there are a lot of voices involved in it. And it's not just, my monotone voice or Karen's wonderful voice throughout the whole item. So
I'm happy to do it. I don't quite recall volunteering for anything along these lines. I think Karen,
I think you left early.
You volunteered me at a meeting I missed. But anyway, yeah, my big focus these last few days is trying to find a new executive director for the land trust. Rich Bod resigned. We spent all day yesterday, committee interviewing 3 candidates. So we're busy. But no, I mean, a minute and a half, 2-minute voiceover is fine.
And
so you need something from us, ideally by the end of Sunday.
Monday is fine.
By the end of Sunday, let's stick with that, Karen.
If you don't like what we say, I guess we'll have to fine tune it, right?
Well, we do want to say we reserve the right to edit.
Well, that's fine. I mean, if you sent us a script,
yep,
that we can just literally read, then we'll get this done a lot quicker than if you let us sort of say what we want to say and then you say, that's not quite it. And now you got another hour on Monday dealing. But no, I haven't read to the end of your email. Jay,
yeah.
So
the script part of it is at the beginning. So everybody's doing the exact same thing. You're doing the introduction of the goal, and then we wrote the goal out for you, and then we wrote the components of that goal for you to say.
All right.
Yeah.
And this is doable on an iPhone, or?
It is.
Do you want to walk through that process, Karen? I know Karen walked me through it the other day on a call just like this. So if folks have their phones, it was very quick and I figured it out pretty fast.
Sure. So I think one of the embedded apps that comes with your phone is something called voice memos.
Yes.
Okay, so you're just going to hit the voice memo.
Judy, do you have an iPhone as well? Or do you have a Droid? Okay.
Yeah, I have an iPhone.
Perfect.
And then you're going to just hit the record button. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to name it or anything. Just hit the record button and say, hi, I'm introducing Vision 1. And then when you're done, you can hit the red button again, stop the recording. And then it automatically sort of puts a name on it, which is wherever you are. Like I'm at my office and it says I'm at Bankers Life and Casualty is what it put the file name on. But once you stop the recording, oh, I'm looking at this and not showing it to you. I'm so sorry. All right. I don't know if you can.
Back it up a little bit. Back up a little. That's probably.
Yeah. So that top one is what I just did. And over here, right underneath of it, when you stop, there were all of those choices, like play, whatever. You're going to hit the 3 dots to the other side. And then it says, do you want to copy, share, whatever you want to share? And then that lets you email it to Jay or me. Does that make sense? Yeah, so it's as simple as that. And you can record it as many times as you want. Just start it over and send me your last and final.
I have a request as a member of the town council and the chair of ordinance. When we do this workshop, can you please stress the importance of the comp plan with any forward movement on a growth management ordinance and how they aren't mutually exclusive?
Okay.
That we really need to get this comp plan down before we can move forward on growth management. That would make my life really a lot easier. Thank you.
I believe that slide is already there, but we're going to go back and make sure it's explicit. Because we
And
talked about,
I think we can expand that beyond the growth management. It really is the foundation for any zoning changes, shoreline zoning, growth management, traffic, considerations.
Right.
So
And the reason I say that is because, as you know, I've got some people who are hot and heavy on, I don't know what they think they're going to do, but that's okay. And you also have at least one candidate running for council who's anti-growth. So anyway.
So one of you being Karen or Jay, will you'll have a voiceover, sort of an overall explanation of what the comp plan is about, why we need it, and something along the lines of, among other things, it supports future zoning.
Mhm.
And so when I get to my section on ordinance, I don't have to go sort of that level of detail.
no.
no
Okay.
detail. No, very, very high level. Read the vision and say, and this vision is supported by,
Yep. Got it.
X, Y, Z, and you're done.
Right. And you don't have to go into how we're doing it. We're just saying in Vision 1, we look at things like watershed management, and then there's a whole list of things that we made for you. So you're not saying what exactly the comp plan is doing. You're just saying, this is where you'll find information on managing our watersheds, protecting our natural resources, all of those things. That's what that vision covers.
I'm Vision 3.
Yes.
Right. All right.
You are Vision 3.
Sounds like fun.
Dave, you're looking.
Yeah, no, I'm all in. I'll get it over the weekend at some point. I guess also just on a bigger picture, are there other things we need to emphasize to get ahead of some of the questions that might come up? I know obviously traffic's going to be one, which I think we address. Access to natural resources, I know, has been brought up. Are there things that we can promote ahead of getting
Yeah, density.
Yeah,
Density.
So I think the one
Density.
thing that, I think will be helpful, and tell me is to remember that the comprehensive plan really sets a vision. It doesn't say how to. So like, for just one example, the other night I was watching the candidates night. And one of the candidates said, it was great. They're like, yep, I've been reading the comprehensive plan, sort of all sorts of good things. And the question was around climate change. And the person said, yeah, I noticed the comprehensive plan talks about climate action, but it doesn't go far enough. And, you know, it's sort of, or it doesn't have enough detail or something to that effect. And I think, well, then good, the comp plan did what it's supposed to. It said, this is an issue for us to work on. And to work on that, it takes a whole nother group effort. So I think that's the thing that would be helpful for the committee to reinforce, and reinforce that this is a different plan than what we did in 2006, an intentionally different plan than what we did in 2006. In 2006, we went, you know, we hardlined zoning areas or neighborhoods and said, in this area, we're going to allow X, Y, and Z use at X, Y, and Z density. It was explicit what was supposed to, and now in this one, we sort of said, yes, we still want growth in these areas, but let's, you know, sort of, you know, you all know, you know, it is definitely more visionary than I think the words we came up with, you know, the first one was very prescriptive, where this one's more synchronous, right? It's really looking at the relationships between everything. And so anyway.
And Jay, I'm actually going to have to run in a minute, but
yeah, appreciate that.
Related to the points you just made, I think, and this had been mentioned before, maybe a few meetings ago. Another thing that I've heard, and I think all committee members and staff have heard at one point or another, is, well, how are we going to pay for this? Again, getting back to this misperception among some people that it's a prescriptive kind of master plan, or that it's a recipe. And so, for instance, if there are references to having a community center or investing in public infrastructure or whatever the case may be, I think some people read that and incorrectly infer that this now is sort of a mandate that the town has to somehow figure out how to pay for. So I think that's a distinction too that should be made at some level, or at least people should be prepared to sort of help clarify. And particularly, I mean, I was going to say, in times like this where everyone's focused on the budget, but everyone's always focused on spending in Scarborough. So I just think it's something that we should be mindful of.
Yeah, and I think that's the good part of this plan is to say, there's demand for a community center. You know, that's a vision of the community. Now, how you get to it is a separate process.
In recognizing, Corey, that you said you have to step off, and I'm sure others might as well, I guess I just want to touch on real quick what Karen and our initial thoughts for the subsequent meetings. Again, because it's all going to be Zoom, I don't know about, you know, I keep, you know, none of us like to last 2 hours as we're about to do on a Zoom meeting if we don't have to. So we're really thinking that, you know, we'll do a series of meetings, which Corey, I think you pointed out pretty well, really, you know, a lot of times we hear, well, hey, you're doing it in October, the summer residents can't get involved. Well, now there's no excuse from wherever you are to not be able to get involved. But we're also thinking that rather than doing like what happened when we received the first draft from the consultants and they came and we held sort of the meeting upstairs and we received a 45-minute presentation of the whole thing. Doing that on Zoom just seems like it's a recipe for disaster. Our thought is to really try to do a series of 2 or 3 meetings and then break down the plan, you know, maybe by visions or what have you, and do it again, keep everything at a 10 to 15 minute presentation, allow for a conversation with those that are there, whether that be an hour or 2 hours, but then do a series of those that address the whole comp plan. And what that will allow us to do is, one, not bore everyone to death and burn them out by watching us for 45 minutes. 2, it will enable us to then splice the video of that to say, okay, you want to watch, you know, the full thing? Here they all are packed together without all the comments. And plus we can have those meetings separately. So it's a way of engaging people during the meeting live, but then stacking it all together so there is that one overarching presentation. So that's where our thinking is headed, and I'm seeing some nodding heads, which makes, I think, Karen and I happy. So,
Spurts. Yeah.
yeah. So, okay, we'll continue down that
Sounds
pathway.
good.
Okay.
All right. I'm
That
gonna
was-
drop off.
that was what
Thanks,
I had.
everybody.
See
Okay,
you,
thanks,
Corey.
Corey.
Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Yeah, so we should, wrap up. Are there any other big points that we need to make? Do we have an attendee? Public comment out there in the world?
Do we still have an attendee? Yep, Rocky's still here. Yep. Not seeing him raise his hand, and I know he knows how to. He's been on a few of these with us, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, his hand is up. Rocky, I think you're in.
Am I there?
You are in.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to say, I know you want to get done. I don't want to take much time, but I just wanted to point out that the Downs team made a presentation to the town council the other night. Pretty involved slideshow with some really good information on the Downs and the return on investment model for the town. I believe it's going to get posted. I assume the town will post it on their website if they haven't already, or if they haven't, I'd be happy to email it to folks. I think there's some great information there. And I just want to point out that this committee worked very hard on coming up with comp plans and zoning, and helped put zoning in place that allowed this type of use to happen. And we're really proud of what this ROI model and this report shows, how the Downs is going to impact the town financially. And I want to thank you for all the good work that you did. And I hope that maybe you folks will take a few minutes and look at that information. And I think it shows very well, and the Downs is headed in the right direction. And I just want to say thank you. So that was it.
Thanks, Rock.
Yeah, good to hear it's succeeding.
Right.
All right, thanks,
All right.
Rocky.
Thank you.
All right, so I guess the last thing on the agenda, thinking about future meetings, Karen and I were thinking maybe it'd be good to get together again in October on the 16th, which would follow the workshop, to see if there's so we can lock in some dates. I'm sure we'll be sending you emails before then anyway, thinking about dates for the follow-up public meetings or discussions about the comp plan. But we're thinking that'd be a good check-in after the workshop. So hopefully you agree with that. And again, we'll send out an email on that if there's general concurrence, at least from the three of you that are left this morning.
Yep.
Okay,
The 16th works for me at this point, by the way.
very good.
Okay.
That's all staff has, I believe.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Sounds good.
All right.
Have a good morning,
Okay.
everyone. or
Thanks,
good
Karen.
rest of
Great.